Now, we know about this decline largely from the work of dedicated local field scientists who spend their days tracking tigers and tiger prey. These conservation heroes are part of the brigade that will help lead range-wide recovery, but we need many more of them. The transformational results that we envision can only be accomplished with a new generation of conservation leadership. At World Wildlife Fund, we've created a program named in honor of our former CEO, Catherine Fuller, called the Catherine Fuller Fellows, to support young scholars who are working in tiger conservation landscapes in their own countries for advanced degrees. Now, the data they start collecting from day one is not some esoteric work that's going to be published 4 years from now in an obscure journal. The very first day they're out there, that information becomes important intel that goes back into how do we manage this recovery in the place that they're working. So I'd like to share with you what I've dubbed Seidensticker's Rule, named in honor of John Seidensticker, who's sitting right over there, the dean of tiger biologists and certainly my mentor, which goes something like this: that any conservation program is only as strong as the science that informs the policy behind it. And the more energetic, well-trained scientists we have on the ground, the more effective tiger conservation activities will become. So that's what we have to put into practice. So we envision a strong, mutually supporting link between our World Wildlife Fund programs and efforts that are being conceived here today and in the future between the Smithsonian and the World Bank that we're here to inaugurate. Now, one of the key tasks of this new cadre of trained professionals will be to monitor the impact on tigers and their habitats of these massive and extensive new infrastructure projects, be they roads, dams, and other types of infrastructure that are being constructed as we speak across Asia and could have massive implications for tigers, and in many cases quite negative ones, unless we do this right from the start. One of the great new opportunities under the Global Tiger Initiative is a team that's led by World Bank environmental engineers that's initiating a review of the way that we do infrastructure and to create new smart designs that move the needle from where we are right now of doing harm in many places to the World Bank's stated position of doing no harm to what we hope for the future of doing measurable good for tigers. And how we quantify that and put that into practice is going to be the work of this collaboration. So creating new development paradigms of smart design that include environmental protection and biodiversity protection are as integral to economic prosperity and human well-being as are roads and dams. We have to monitor the efficacy of our progress in this fundamental effort, and so this new generation of conservation leaders being trained under this initiative will do so and be part of the difference between tigers and no wild tigers in some of these landscapes. Now, saving wild tigers takes both bottom-up and top-down effort to advance. From the bottom up, we need specialists who work effectively with communities to help ensure that tigers and people can coexist. The science we do is important, but one of the wisest biologists I've ever met, Richard Cowling from South Africa, once said, "Conservation is 10% science and 90% negotiation." So we need field staff trained to negotiate effectively and arm them with powerful enough incentives to engage rural people to want to leave space for tigers. Now, consider this analogy for a moment. What if we had tigers in this country and that a forest north of here, let's call it Rockville National Park, was an important source population for tigers? Now imagine that Rock Creek Park is the only viable corridor left to allow dispersal of young male tigers from Rock Creek National Park to Roosevelt Island Tiger Reserve. Now, how many of you in the audience who live near Rock Creek Park would be willing to tolerate tigers passing next to your communities? Yet, you can see why this idea, the estimate of conservation being 90% negotiation, is not too far-fetched. But the analogy puts this into perspective, because that's what we're facing in some of the most heavily populated parts of the tiger's range, is how do we have the powerful new incentives to make people want to have tigers as neighbors? I want to give you one example that I think is a powerful new incentive can be carbon financing. And I want to give you one example of that. In a groundbreaking program in Nepal, we've done a project called Carbonated Tigers, where we're aiming for a win-win-win. The basic concept being that if we can restore critical tiger habitat, which is forested, at the same time that we're sequestering carbon and provide carbon credits to rural communities, then we can actually have a benefit for all combined. So in this part of Nepal, we have riverine forests, which are vital habitat for tigers where they occur in high densities, and they're mostly degraded by rural villagers who graze their cattle in there. We remove the cattle and have them stall-fed to provide methane gas for methane gas plants, and then allow the forest to grow back. The tiger prey returns very quickly, the tigers return, the forest sequesters carbon, we establish a carbon credit program which provides income streams to rural communities who now have an economic return powerful enough to want to live next to tigers and allow tigers to disperse between reserves. So if this model works, we need to replicate this as fast as possible, and with the help of the World Bank will be vital in this concern. But while we're here today to inaugurate and empower and mobilize efforts on behalf of future conservation leaders, we also have to engage the present leadership of the world at the highest political and economic levels. And we at World Wildlife Fund salute President Zellick in his efforts to bring world leaders together to try and get on their agenda and on their radar the serious plight of wild tigers. And his offer last year to host a Year of the Tiger Summit in 2010 has been gathering momentum, and we're really on our way to do that. World Wildlife Fund is fully committed to work with the World Bank, Smithsonian, and all our tiger conservation partners to accomplish this historic gathering that we believe will mark the beginning of a new day for tigers and biodiversity conservation in Asia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Finally, it is my honor to introduce Mr. Pavan Sukhdev, who is a senior banker with Deutsche Bank and founder and director of a green accounting project in India. Mr. Sukhdev is on secondment from Deutsche Bank to the United Nations Environmental Program, where he is studying the impacts of ecological damage on the economy and on human well-being. His interim report shows that the losses of biodiversity and ecosystems are both economically vast and disproportionately harmful to the world's rural poor. As the GTI works to promote tiger conservation and seeks its own ways to mitigate biodiversity loss, we will be very grateful for his keen insights and support. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Pavan Sukhdev.